Neil McTaggart's Crossing, Part 6, a story of 1920s Scottish immigration to Canada, podcast number 1107, and you can find the transcript at teacherjoseph.com. Neil McTaggart's Crossing, Part 6, the Gaelic Church. Sunday broke with a sharper cold than the day before, a frost that glittered over every fence post and pine bough. Neil woke to the sound of voices moving quietly in the kitchen, the muted clattery of crockery, and Agnes's low tones, urging the children into their best clothes. By the time he came down, the house was alive with the preparations of Sabbath. Robert was fastening his coat, brushing a faint trace of sawdust from the sleeve, though Neil couldn't guess why it would matter. Thomas was silent as ever, but dressed with care. Edward fidgeted in a stiff collar, while Anna's hair was bound with a ribbon she wore proudly. "We're off to the kirk today," Robert told him, handing Neil his own scarf. "A Gaelic service. You'll not follow much, but you'll see the heart of the people here." The walk was brisk, the air so sharp it stung his lungs, and the snow crunching firm underfoot. They crossed open ground, the land rolling white and empty, save for the threads of smoke from homesteads. After nearly an hour they came to a clearing where a wooden structure rose plain and solid against the sky. It was no grand church of stone, like Kilbirnie, but a timber hall, its roof pitched high, the beams inside hewn from the very pines surrounding them. The building smelled of sap and cold wood. Neil's eyes were drawn upwards, for the dark rafters crossed like ribs overhead. Robert paused by the doorway, his hand brushing the beam. "Helped to set that, I did," he said, his voice low with pride. "Callum and I cut these timbers last spring. Hard work, but good work. A place for us all." Inside, the benches were plain, arranged in rows, and faced a simple table at the front. No ornament, no carving, no coloured glass, only wood and light. The air was hushed, heavy with breath, and the faint creak of boards under boots. Families settled together, coats pulled close, voices dropping to whispers. Neil followed his uncle into a pew, sitting between Edward and Thomas. Across the aisle, Esther and her family found their place. When Neil glanced up, her eyes met his. It was a brief flicker, a small curve of her mouth, before she turned back to her hymn book. But it lit something steady in him. He looked down quickly, aware of Thomas shifting beside him, though the boy said nothing. The service began not with the minister's booming tones, but with the voice of an older man, grey-bearded and broad-shouldered, rising from the front bench. He carried no robe or collar, only a Bible worn soft with use. He prayed in Gaelic, his words flowing in long cadences that rose and fell like waves. Neil caught nothing of it, not a phrase, not a shape of meaning, only the music of it, the rolling sounds that reminded him of his grandmother's fireside songs. Around him, the congregation responded with murmurs of Amen, their voices weaving together. He felt outside, a stranger, yet also strangely stirred, as if something beyond words pressed close. A psalm followed, sung in the old way, one man chanting the line, the rest of the congregation following in a great swell of sound. The voices cracked and blended, harsh and beautiful, filling the timber hall until the beams seemed to tremble. Neil glanced across again and found Esther singing, her eyes lifted, her lips shaping the words with care. She noticed his gaze for an instant and held it, a shared thread of recognition, across the pews. It did not go unnoticed. A woman in the row ahead glanced back, her brows raised slightly before she turned to her hymn book. Neil felt his ears burn, but when he looked again, Esther's expression was calm, untroubled. The sermon was long, delivered in Gaelic. A torrent of sound had washed over Neil in rhythms he couldn't follow. His thoughts drifted. He studied the faces around him. Robert, listening intently, Agnes with her hands folded, Thomas staring hard at the boards beneath his feet. The children shifted restlessly, only hushed by a glance from Callum's stern eye. When the service ended, the benches scraped back and the hall emptied into the snow-bright yard. The men gathered near the door, stamping their boots and discussing weather, timber, and livestock. The women drifted together in small circles, shawls drawn tight. Agnes was quickly surrounded. "And how are you keeping, Agnes?" one asked, her tone soft with concern. "You've been looking pale. Have you had the strength for the work of the house?" another added. Agnes smiled faintly, brushing it aside. "I manage well enough. The Lord provides." But Neil saw the flicker in her eyes, the way her hand tightened on her shawl. Esther's mother laid a gentle hand on her arm. "You've a good household about you. That makes all the difference." Nearby, Robert stood with Callum, their talk low but easy. Neil caught a phrase. "That beam should hold for generations." The two men shared a nod of quiet satisfaction, their bond built as much from timber as from kinship. Children darted between the groups, their laughter bright against the winter air. Edward joined them, chasing through the snow, while Anna clung shyly to Agnes's skirts. Neil lingered on the edge, unsure of his place. Then Esther approached, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Did you follow any of it?" she asked, her voice pitched so only he could hear. "Not a word," Neil admitted with a half-smile. "Only the sound of it, like music." She tilted her head, her eyes bright. "That's enough for a start. The meaning comes later. I can show you." Their eyes held again, a spark passing between them. But before he could answer, her younger brother called, and she stepped back with a small nod. The families parted soon after, voices carrying across the snow as each returned to their homes. Neil walked beside Robert, the timber kirk shrinking behind them, its beams dark against the pale sky. "You built it well," Neil said quietly. Robert's mouth carved in a rare smile. "Aye, a place for us all to stand together." Neil glanced back once more. Across the white field, Esther turned too, their eyes meeting across the distance. The moment was brief, gone as quickly as breath in the cold air, but it warmed him against the wind. As they trudged on, the sound of Gaelic still rang in his ears, strange and familiar all at once. He did not understand, but he felt it, a rhythm beneath the words, a pull towards something larger than himself, and in that pull he felt the beginning of friendship, maybe more, with the girl whose voice carried those words with such steadiness.